Hello and welcome to Agents of Aquarius, episode 28. Jim Pine, extremely excited to be here today with my brother and Mr. Matty D. We find ourselves right around the time of this new eclipse happening, this monumental moment in history. This won't happen again for 3 years, whatever. It's like always something. And there's a lot going on that day, and I'm happy to be here and discuss all things eclipse and otherworldly and even worldly and earthly with my best buddy in the world, Maddie. How you doing, bro?
Doing great, doing great. And I'm super stoked to talk about this eclipse too, because it's just so different. It was just 6 months ago. I was in Albuquerque for that eclipse. None of this was a thing. No one gave a crap about traffic. No one gave any thought to delayed response times by police and first responders. None of that stuff. But this one is super weird. What was some of the oddities we were talking about just before about this?
Well, we've talked in the coming, we'll say like probably a month out now. We've probably been discussing this lightly, right? And today we're not going to go crazy about it, but like the weird thing, that aren't astronomically aligned, that the fact that there isn't Chiron in this sect and this thing with that and all this, all these different astrological alignments happening. It's the weird ones. Like, why are you starting CERN on that day? Like,
Yeah.
what's that? Why are we doing CERN startup? Why are we building the giant, what is it, 12 or 14 mile across pentagram that you like to summon stuff with somehow? You're, beating protons and electrons against each other and summoning crap with your Shiva statue of death and destruction.
Yeah, CERN's got a lot of weird stuff going on about it for sure. But
So that's
also
weird.
like conspiracy land is always interested in that because like from our perspective, it could do any number of things. It could open portals to other dimensions as far as we know. I mean, there's hypotheses by the scientific community that it'll do all kinds of weird stuff. So they're
Yeah.
firing up CERN. What else are they doing on the eclipse? There's that NASA bullshit too.
NASA is launching three ASAP it's three rockets, research rockets into the eclipse shadow or whatever they're doing for atmospheric research, apparently.
Yeah, what time are they launching those three rockets?
Well, they say it's 15:33 because they do military time. But that would be 3:33. They're doing it three rockets at 3:33 on 4/8/2024 in the eclipse path to do research. It's
Can
like,
I tell you something, bro? Every time I've arranged a meeting, like a Zoom call, or got to meet with a salesperson, you just pick a round number. I'll meet you at 3. I'll meet you at 3:30. I'll meet you at 4 o'clock. 3:33. I mean, really, like that's an accident.
well, that number was all over the Cupid too. That 33. I mean, but that's the master builder number of the Freemasons. That's the third level of the master builder numbers: 11, 22, and 33. And they're launching. I'm trying to find the rockets, but they're called APEP. The
APAP.
APEP, yeah,
It's like an
rockets.
atmospheric measurement experiment or something like that, isn't it? I mean, I
Yes.
know these rockets are relatively common, which is no big deal that these things are getting launched. But the fact that they do this weird bullshit about it, like 3 rockets at 3:33, it's like you should have just made it 3:30 if you weren't doing something ritualistic. And that's what we were talking about. That they do ritualistic, bizarre stuff.
Crazy.
I'm sorry, by they I mean our ruling class and people in general, that mentality often will do this crap. They'll do rituals like this 3:33 thing. What you just
333, 3 rockets, the APEP rocket, right?
mm-hmm.
But then you take APEP and then you Google that with God next to it, like, because APEP's an actual God.
Mm-hmm.
APEP is APEP is an Egyptian,
Oh God, here we go.
Apophis in Greek, Egyptian god of chaos, of darkness and disorder.
Hey, darkness fits. That makes so they choose Apophis, a god of chaos, darkness, and
APEP,
disorder.
APEP. Why is APEP evil? Because Ra was the solar deity, bringer of light, and thus the upholder of Ma'at. APEP was viewed as the greatest enemy of Ra, and thus was given the title enemy of Ra. And also Lord of Chaos. The Lord of Chaos was seen as a giant snake or serpent, leading to such titles as Serpent from the Nile and Evil Dragon.
Unbelievable.
And the death comet will be in the sky while they shoot 3 rockets of chaos and disorder, APEP rockets into the eclipse, into the dark shadow, the loss of light. Like, what are we doing?
Unbelievable. And, you know, it's been said before. I'm going to say it again. The ruling class, such as it is, they believe in the power of rituals and stuff like that. You don't have to believe it, but they do, and
Astrology, yeah.
that's why this shit is called APAP after this chaotic god of darkness. That's why it's at 333 and not 330. That's why there's 3 missiles and not or rockets, not 1, 2, or 4. I mean, these people are bonkers, bro.
They'll be viewing it all probably with no, I guess you couldn't, but there'll be people up there viewing it in Arizona and in Tempe, Arizona, I believe it is, at the Lucifer telescope.
The Lucifer telescope.
They changed the name to Lucy, but it for years was the Lucifer telescope.
Yeah, owned by whom?
Oh, the church, the Vatican.
The Vatican owns the
A
Lucifer.
church called the Lucifer. It's called Lucifer. They now call Lucy because people have found out about it. I'm like, why would you call it giant? The world's largest telescope. I actually think it is also. Why would you do that? And they're Lucy? Oh, you mean little Lucy over here?
Yeah, bro. And if you want to go ahead and check up on your fact checkers, when you fact check that, ask your phone, does the Vatican own a telescope named Lucifer? And you see like PolitiFact or USA Today fact checkers, when that stuff pops up, you know, they won't give you a definitive answer of yes, it is. They're like, this is misleading information because the telescope is called Lucy. Side note, it was used to be called Lucifer's. You know,
And who is Lucifer? Lucifer is a fallen angel of God, right? It was his greatest angel.
yeah, but the point is they don't give you a straight answer. And why would the church name a telescope Lucifer in the first place? I can't even get started on that one. But then when your fact checkers can't give you a straight fact on the answer, that's frustrating because there you know you're being manipulated. You're getting conned.
So let's go back to the APAP. It's a giant snake. It's seen as this giant snake, right?
That's perfect.
Where do we see a giant snake? Where we just were talking about. It's the Vatican hall, speaking hall, where the Pope speaks.
The Pope's audience hall, yes.
The Pope's audience hall. And if you look at that, it's a giant serpent behind him. There's the creation, the modern art creation of this thing is so intense and so it's wild the way they put it right in your face. Symbolism will be their downfall is the famous words of Manly P. Hall.
Thank you. And seriously, anyone listening, just Google Pope's audience hall and look at the building that was built literally in the shape of a snake, 2 giant circular windows that represent that are clearly eyes. Like, this is no joke. You look at that building, that snake's got fangs, big red eyes or whatever. I mean, it's a snake. There's no blocking it out once you've seen it. And you don't have to like do that squinty thing when you're looking at a sailboat that you can't see right away, but you got to be the right distance and squint your eyes. There's none of that crap. Like, it's a goddamn giant serpent and it's the Pope's audience hall. I mean, what's going on with those people?
Now, here's an interesting one. Which Pope? Wait, what does that mean, Jim? What do you mean, which Pope? There's only one Pope. No, there's 3 popes. There's the white Pope, the black Pope, and the gray Pope. I don't remember the white or the black's name right now. I forget. Well, I don't know who the current white Pope is. That's the guy you see in the white. That's the one everybody sees. Then there's the black Pope. He's of the Jesuits, I believe.
Is there any like easy access way to confirm that information about a gray Pope and a black Pope? Like,
yeah, Google
wiki page or
no,
something?
it's out there. You can Google it now. I'll just Google it. But then I do know who the gray Pope is. The gray Pope,
like an Orsini?
Pepe Orsini.
Pepe Orsini.
Now there's that name comes tumbling back again if you do investigations into some of the oldest families around, some of the most powerful oldest families in the world, the Orsinis, the Medicis. So these are these ancient old lineages families, these old cartels because they kept winning, and never got taken out by a king or anything. They
Yeah, and
were the
if they would
kings.
move their wealth around, and
Um, three popes I'll put in. So yeah. Uh, what
well, we
else?
know our white Pope Francis has for his audience hall a building constructed in the shape of the head of a serpent. That's some nefarious stuff. And again, what kind of optics are you thinking when you name your telescope Lucifer?
Yeah, well, that's where these weird occurrences keep happening with this huge order, which then makes you think, like, is the Bible, this information in the Bible, is this like all symbolism that if you don't know, you just think it's all factual information and you don't understand there's these like symbology to the enormity to it? Because then if you look at the church, the same thing's happening. Like, it's all about being austere and giving everything over, but it's like, oh, just give it all to the church, a place that doesn't pay taxes. It's not even part of Italy. The Vatican City is its own entity, its own country, you could almost say, within the town of the city of Rome.
Yeah. You remember who the largest landowner was on our in our home?
Landowner in our home.
On Long Beach Island, New Jersey, when we were kids in the 80s.
Oh yeah, the largest landowner was the Catholic Church.
It was specifically St. Francis Church.
The St.
They own
Francis.
more
Yeah.
property on that island than any other single entity because old folks would die and they just leave their property to the church, or they would acquire property through investments, any number of things. But that was, here is like a local church in a relatively small town happens to own a lot of property where properties nowadays sell for $1, $2, $3 million a pop.
Hmm. Yeah.
A lot of
Just
money.
the land. It's always an interesting thing. And then, you see where the church is now, they're like turning their back on what their religion was. They're becoming like new. Like,
Yeah, under Francis, they gotten a little progressive and wokish or something.
yeah, yeah. It's an interesting facet. It's to me, it seems like, I think it's all a big, not like, once, like there's not all bad Freemasons, not all people Catholics are bad or something. But at that top order where they're doing, I don't know what they're doing in that audience hall with the serpent behind them. I don't know if that's when all three popes show up for one meeting a year, or they'll show up every 333 days or something. I don't know what they're doing over there,
Maybe
but
they're doing a ritual.
it's just wild. And if you also look at like the biggest fines to be paid out next to pharmaceutical companies is the Catholic Church for the horrors inflicted by their staff upon the children of the world.
Yeah, seriously. And dude,
Like,
remember this
like,
thing we were just saying about I'm saying our ruling class is into doing rituals, and we're talking
mhm.
about them doing rituals on, an auspicious astrological and or astronomical day, the eclipse day. If you don't think rituals are a thing in our culture, look at that Catholic church we're talking about, because all these people do is rituals all day long. Anyway, that's what your church ceremonies are. But what I'm saying and what we're saying is that in the same way the Catholic Church or any other church will do rituals for whatever the reasons are. I'm just saying that our ruling class does rituals too. They just have a little more black arts mindset behind it.
Absolutely. It's been shown time and time again. The rituals, man, like P. said, I mean, this symbolism, that's what they use. That's what's the ritual is. It's based on symbols and things that you do. It's so much symbology. There's so much depth into symbology. Like, you could just take a statue of Ganesha, for instance,
Hmm.
and one person would go, oh wow, that's like an elephant god. And that can be what it is. You just see, oh, it's some elephant, that's some crazy elephant thing, man. That's crazy. That's
Guy
wild.
with the elephant's head.
Oh, he's got 4 arms too. That's nuts. No, he doesn't have 4 arms. He has 2 arms. But no, he does have 4 arms. It's like, oh, that's crazy. But there's symbolism in the entire statue. Like, the trunk is symbolism. His eyes, his ears, is like what he's holding in his hands. This is to
Mhm.
protect you and take away things. This is to bring in things for you. And if you don't know that symbolism, you don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
Like,
doesn't he have one foot on the ground?
1 foot on the ground, 1 foot into, into the ethers. So he's good, you got to be grounded though, but just, you don't have to be completely all the time,
Yeah.
2 feet on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we kill it to death, is there any other interesting symbolism or ritual stuff going on around the eclipse that you've heard of, other than like states of emergency in all these towns that never did it before?
The death comment or whatever, the devil's comment,
Yeah,
being you'll
good.
like, we wouldn't have been able to see it, but because there's an eclipse, you'll be able to see it. I guess because you're facing that part of the universe or something where the devil's comet's moving.
I
But
heard that
normally it's
you might be
daytime,
able
you
to see
can't
it.
see it, but you might be able to see it because of that now.
Yeah, the comet's visible during the daytime, so you got to black out the sun to see the comet.
Hmm.
So during totality, if you're there in totality, I'm assuming that's when you'd be able to see the devil's comet, which again, that's a pretty symbolic name.
Yeah, it's freaking wild, bro. Because it has horns on it. That's why they call it the devil's comet.
Mhm.
It has
Uh,
like some projectile horn. Oh, what?
no, no, I think the tail's split like
Or the
a
tail's something. Yeah.
something like that.
See how much we know, people. See how much we
Again,
know.
something that probably doesn't look much like devil horns at all. More
Yeah.
like two tails on a kite, but whatever. They named it the devil's comet.
So this is where we're at. These are like some of the interesting things they're putting into the programming of the world. These are the interesting things that are just happening
Mhm.
also in the world. Um, you know, we're in interesting times, my friend.
And thank God we have such a reputable class of journalists in this country who could, relay such quality information to us.
They're so good at relaying just the truth without ever wavering or giving in to some type of corporate interest. Could you imagine if you lived in a place where the corporate interest had taken over media and the media couldn't report the truth because the corporate interest would then be like, we're not advertising with you and we're your biggest advertiser, so you will do what we say? That would be crazy. Like, that would be wild. There's every
Otherwise known
country
as
in the yeah, every
welcome to
country in the
America.
world allows it to happen. Only 2 countries don't allow that to happen, and that's New Zealand and America. Pharmaceutical companies cannot advertise in New Zealand or America, but that's
Damn shame
because
you have it exactly backwards, you sarcastic bastard. Isn't it weird though? There's two countries in the entire world will allow that advertising, pharmaceuticals.
Hmm.
Because they know
Yeah.
it's supposed to be up to a doctor. All that advertising does is convince the patient that they see a solution to their problem, even though they might not be trained enough to know the best answer for them. And believe me, I'm not going to argue against doing your own research. I'm just saying that advertising, marketing, propaganda, it's all the same thing. When you're propagandizing people to take Vioxx, say, people are going to see the commercials for Vioxx and think, oh, I have a heart condition, I'll take Vioxx. But Vioxx is also the drug that killed 60,000 people before it got pulled from the market.
Mm.
Doctors might have not prescribed that drug, but it was advertised and people asked for it. And the doctors are subject to the influence of marketing too.
Yeah, I was being very sarcastic. Our media is completely owned by 100% owned by the corporations,
Mm-hmm.
people that pay their advertising. That's it. We don't have newspapers out there newspapering for the like to get some great stories out. Like, it's just all BS. It's all bullshit. They're not doing, and there's hardly any journalists right now. You have to go to social media to find any type of journalists that are worth their salt. Um,
Well, you know what? I tell you, I learn a lot by watching Jimmy Dore. And not only do I learn little facts from him, but he also steers me into my own bits of research. So credit where it's due, but when it comes to these journalists too, culturally journalism is all that ruling class. You look at any journalist that's that's part of a big organization, whether it's MSNBC or Fox or NPR or New York Times or Washington Post, whatever. Go ahead and look at their LinkedIn and see where their education's from. It's always going to be Columbia and Stanford and Harvard and Yale. It's going to be all these Ivy League schools. And the people who are doing journalism now, again, tip of the hat, Jimmy Dore, people doing journalism now, they're from the literal ruling class that is undermining the middle class, and God, forget the poor people. They're fucked all around. But the people who are supposed to be informing the majority of the people in this country are part of the class that benefits most from keeping information from the majority of people in this country. Like they're literally doing news that benefits themselves, and they will never contradict it. One, because they're told not to, and two, because the system in place benefits them. And that's not journalism. That's not journalism. That's just ruling class propaganda. That's why Anderson Cooper is a Vanderbilt, and that's why you don't get informed about things that really matter. Because the
Hmm.
people doing the work of journalism, they're not here for us.
There's real journalism going on. Like you sent me this story from Reuters correspondent
This is
Leo Galou.
yeah, spoiler alert, everyone, this is some seriously good journalism.
So this is what happens when you really get down. You go paper to pen and you really get out there. You come up with an article called How Climate Change is Hitting Vulnerable Indonesian Trans Sex Workers.
Told you people, this is serious stuff.
Yeah, dude. Nearly 93% of respondents saw decreased income during the rainy season.
It's just so incredible, dude. You want to talk about being misinformed? And this is super funny just in and of itself. Like the fact that a Reuters correspondent is going to put this article out there, but it has so many key buzzwords: climate change, trans, sex workers, like all these things that will
Vulnerable.
vulnerable. Yeah, but they're it's those are primarily divisive keywords.
Mhm.
Like there's gonna be someone on the left who's feeling this way and someone on the right who feels that way. Like not only is it not informing you of anything that anybody in this country needs to be informed about because there's bigger issues out there for us, but it's hitting all these like emotional keywords that are going to get people, I guess, interested and think it's news.
But here's the thing. The truth is right in front of you the whole time with the story. It goes Joya Patiha, a 43-year-old Indonesian transgender woman, first started to notice that changing weather patterns in the mountain-ringed city of Bandung were affecting her income as a sex worker a decade ago. Now, we have this whole thing with climate change. Oh, the climate's changing. Yeah, you're admittedly doing weather modification.
Yeah.
They're admittedly doing it. We know now. Most people will think I am just saying that and being, oh, he's just trying to be spicy right now and say crazy things. No, it's real. Like weather modification's real. You can see city councils be like, oh yeah, we've been working with the weather modification to increase rainfall, blah, blah, blah. Like you're doing weather modification and then you're going to still try to talk about climate change. Like you're fucking changing the climate.
Yeah. China has 100,000 weather modification stations on the Tibetan plateau.
What, what,
That you want to talk about changing weather? That's a lot right there. 100,000 different weather modification stations.
we are out of control as a species. We are out of control. They're screaming climate change while they change the climate. You know, Bill Gates is like spraying silver oxide in the air so that we can have like a reflective bubble.
That's a
All
plan to
the
reflect
while
sunlight.
living
Yeah.
in this atmospheric planet spinning through space that's a vacuum. We're right next to it, but we're right next to the vacuum.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you get? You get Indonesian trans sex workers. Now I gotta have some sympathy there because there's just no way I'm getting Indonesian trans sex worker in the rainy season. I'm sorry, but I'll be part of the statistic. It has to be at least on a sunny day. But the fact that that's what's being put in front of people and presented as news, why not the cis male sex workers? Why not cis female sex workers? Like
Honestly,
why is
why
this
not get a
one class
raincoat
here?
and go out there? There's going to be less competition. It's probably they'll stay inside because of the rain. It's like go fucking be a well, I was going to say be a man, but go, man up. No,
Go make some money.
go make money. Get out there in the rain. What are you doing, woman? Come
No,
on.
it's just like me. I'm not going there in the rainy season, so they're doomed.
Okay. Well,
But it's such a joke, though. It's
okay.
just such a joke.
So all listeners, if you're looking for cheap prostitutes, go to Indonesia in the rainy
In the
season.
rainy season,
You
absolutely.
you can get to double your money, especially if they're
Two
trans.
for one.
That is 2 for 1. All right, enough jokes here. I've crossed the line too much. Not Leo Galoo. He didn't cross the line with this article. This is journalism today. This is what we're dealing with. Not talk about the Indonesian government doing this or the corporations enslaving the people who are no, make sure you just the trans sex workers, it's a little rainy out and I'm making less money. We do see real journalism happening. It's not often. If you search for it, you can find reputable people that are trying to. One of my favorites is Whitney Webb. I think she's amazing. She's just always like a little spoiler, dude. She's just spoiling the party with information, pulling stuff out that you don't see, and then she just puts it together in an incredible way as a journalist and can get a story out there. I like James O'Keefe. He's kind of like on one side versus the other, unfortunately, but I do like I like undercover journalism. That's how you get great stories. I've watched 60 Minutes so many times, and the best stories were generally with undercover or something was happening because that's the
Yeah.
only time you get the real information.
Can I real quick comment on you said James Keefe is kind of like on his one side.
Kind
The
of.
weird phenomenon with the good journalists now, like I want to rattle off a bunch of names right now. But it's worth saying if you're doing any kind of real journalism, the establishment really quickly accuses you of being a right winger. Like Matt Taibbi is a great example. This guy was a Rolling Stone writer for a long time, back when Rolling Stone was good. Um, he's been branded as like this like crazy right winger. Glenn Greenwald, a gay guy married to a Brazilian congressman, he's branded a right winger.
He left the country, right?
Well, he still comes to the States, but he lives in Brazil where his husband and they got a couple or three kids or something like that. But
Mhm.
Glenn Greenwald was always an identifiable lefty libertarian. But he's a right winger now. It's just like this instant slur that gets thrown at people, which is funny because to anyone on the right wing, they're like, yeah, we'll take Glenn Greenwald. They don't care that he's gay. He broke the Snowden case. He's a great journalist. But it's become a slur for people on the left that anyone who's like pushing back against the system as it is getting branded a right winger by the left. And it's like it's Matt Taibbi, it's Michael Schellenberger, it's Whitney Webb. I don't know if they call her that, but it's Greenwald, it's
Yeah, but these are titles.
like all these guys who are credible, like
Yes.
their bio says I'm a lefty.
Yeah, but we got to stop. Who cares about the titles, right? These titles they just throw around on anybody for anything. They'll just throw it out there.
Mm-hmm.
They'll call you either fascist, a Nazi, or an anti-Semite. That's like the three things they'll just throw on something. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's these are what they do to discredit people. It doesn't matter. Let's listen to the message they're delivering. That's the most important part.
Yeah, and that's how they try to drown out the message. And we'll get into that when we break the news later, but that's really what the thing is. It's just frustrating because, Glenn Greenwald came out and said, "Hey, you know what? You guys call me right winger, but I didn't change, you did." And the easiest way to understand that is the left traditionally, historically, was for our entire lives. I mean, you and I, our entire lives, born 71, the left was always anti-war and pro-free speech. And now the people who say they're lefties are pro-war because Russia bad, Putin bad. They're pro-war and they're pro-censorship. So the people who are claiming to be lefties are actually espousing right conservative values. And they're like they're like hippie in name only. They're not
Yeah,
hippies anymore. They're government mouthpieces.
but this is what happens when you have these party identifying factors because what they do is they just change the party while you still are part of it. The same as like
Change the values of the party.
yeah, mRNA technology. They then just pretended that you were using old cells of something else or parts of a something in a
Which is what a vaccine
vaccine.
is.
Yeah, and that's what that you know. But that's not what they changed it. The same as the party changes, like you just said. I think Glenn Greenwald said, like you changed. I didn't change. I have the
Mhm.
same values I had then. Like
Yeah,
these are
the
the things that
definition of
changed,
vaccine changed.
but we still use the same words, and then everything gets conflated and turned upside down. We often hear a lot uh the inversion of things, we often hear that. Like, what about the inversion? That's a thing that we're watching happen. The inversion of language, the inversion of like a party that was anti-war is now pro-war. They
Yeah,
don't even know why they're pro-war. It's to defeat this evil thing. It's like, what the whoa, like, can we stop?
yeah. It's like, no, your values should be anti-war because that's a very humanistic value. If your values are pro-war, it's probably kind of like corporate profitable, benefits me kind of ethics.
Yeah,
It's the
well,
upside down.
it's the upside down, and that's how you I think that's in 1984 they do that. Where they if they could switch everything and make, basically black is white, or tell you the sky isn't blue, it's green, or whatever, things of that nature. It's like, how do you even fight against that? I mean, we know how you fight against that, but that's what you're up against. Like, why would somebody want to do that? And it's like, oh, to confuse everything.
Yeah. So when they changed the definition of vaccine, the definition of herd immunity, the definition of what it is to be a lefty,
Hmm.
that is some confusing shit because I found myself literally talking to a tie-dyed hippie with long hair who's spouting off like a government mouthpiece, pro-war and pro-censorship. And it's like, for you to call yourself a hippie, you have to redefine what that word is. And just like for someone to call that thing a vaccine, you got to redefine what the word is. And that's quite literally what happened. If anyone's not hip to it, that's Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com. Companies like that literally changed the definition of what these words mean from 2019 to 20, whatever, 2021.
I heard
Vaccine
Miriam.
definition got changed.
I heard Miriam and Webster were both on the flight logs.
On the island. Touche, Agent Pine.
On the island. Um, Hashtag, yeah, Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself. Uh, dude, it's the journalism. This is where it's at. The stories are out there. This is the thing. We think, oh no, Amy Roebuck on live feed got out there into the world, talking about she had the complete story about Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, this is in 2016. She had the complete story. And they said no because they got a call from the royal family. Buckingham Palace called and said no. If you do the story, you'll have no access to the royal wedding. And they scrapped the whole story so they could have royal wedding story. So a bunch of freaking little mouthpieces that the world just loves their morning television, they could go and watch the royal wedding.
Yeah.
Didn't we already throw tea in a bay and said, like, we're done? What? Who cares about them?
Who's
Why
the
you
journalist again?
Amy Roebuck?
Credit to her. I saw that video of her. She was pissed that she didn't get to run with her story. Now, you know what? She's probably an Ivy League person too, but at least she knew she had gold when she had it and she wanted to run that story.
I don't know enough about her, so I won't discredit her or credit her. I saw what I wondered was, like, is she angry because she had a good story, or is she angry because it was a good story that would be good for humanity to know about, that there's these things
No,
happening?
no, the first one.
Oh
It's the
man,
first one.
that's
She
so
had,
yucky.
yeah, she's in that position because she's an animal. She's a badass in her career or in her field. She's a badass. She's one of the best. But the people in that field, they're not here for you and me. That's why she wasn't running that story because it was for the good of humanity. No, she was running that story because it was good for her career. She had a golden story. She could have won herself a little prize for it, and she would have been the star journalist. That's what I think. Again, I don't know
Yeah.
her, but I know enough.
Unfortunately, I think you might be right. But it doesn't matter. Okay, that does not matter. The thing was that good stories gets quashed, you know? That's what happens. And God, I said last week I want to get away from good and bad. These stories that are exposing things, the underbelly,
Mm-hmm.
that's important. You know, this is how you know you're in a fair press when things like that happen. When that doesn't happen anymore, it's because they've been taken over. The you know, the powers that be, the owners of the papers. So even if it gets to that, which is all owned by BlackRock and Vanguard and
Mm-hmm.
State Street Capital, and they all just own everything. So you can't do anything against any of that. You know what I mean? It's
No, but the silver linings there, like Seymour Hersh, he's the guy that broke the Melee massacre in Vietnam. He did that big story on who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Us, United
Mhm.
States military. And his story was really well put together, and he protected his sources while explaining the general place where his sources came. Like that was some really good reporting. But you didn't find it on NBC or ABC or CBS. Amy Robeck wasn't repeating it. It was on his Substack. It was on his social media. Same as guys like Matt Taibbi. They're they don't work for these mainstream organizations, but these people get pretty good reach. And if enough of us keep sharing their stories, then it only gets better.
Okay. I mean, I guess Twitter is one place where you can find a lot of those people dropping stuff, right? Probably.
Yeah, yes, but I think Twitter is just doing censorship in a selectively different manner. They
Okay.
still act stuff, but I'd say overall Twitter's less censored than it used to be. That I think is patently obvious. But we're not going to make the mistake of putting them on a pedestal because they still do their own bit of censoring, and it's just less.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
TikTok censors plenty too.
I mean, we've seen it all over Instagram, TikTok, Meta, Facebook, then all the major medias, they censor everything. I mean,
Yeah.
this is what we're living in. And then how do you get out of this? How do you break the matrix? How do you get, because this is become the matrix, because then you're supposed to believe what's around you. Like, just
Hmm.
believe your eyes. Don't believe your instincts. Don't believe your intuition. Just believe your eyes over and over and over.
Yeah. I,
And
I
that's,
think it's breaking already.
oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's why we're doing a podcast, for Christ's sake.
Hey, there you go, brother.
I mean, yeah, it's obviously happening. It's
But
been
that's why
happening.
Taibbi has a platform too, and Seymour Hersh has a platform too, and people have a chance to tune in to Glenn Greenwald or Chris Hedges and hear what these guys who push back against the establishment are doing and saying. Max Blumenthal's another good one. Aaron Mate, they're out there. Caitlin Johnstone is one of my faves. I've talked about her before, but they really are out there. And I think since we're watching the ratings reports for the mainstream media, for the three big cable ones, for the three networks or whatever, the cable news channels, all these things, they're just getting less and less viewership, while people doing podcasts and YouTube channels are getting more views than outlets like CNN. A
I mean,
YouTube channel get more than CNN, and
Joe
that's good
Rogan.
news.
Joe Rogan has the largest reach, right, in the world right now, or
I
no?
thought some British comedian overtook him, but maybe that was just for like a second.
Okay. Well,
But
okay.
let's call it him.
More or less, Joe Rogan has one of the largest reaches in the world. And it's kind of cool because he's a dude who's not religious. So he's not spewing a, his style, you know,
Uh-huh.
of religion or something like that. He seems to be a guy on the up and up. And that, if you look at his life and his life path and what he's done, and he's made it to Hollywood. He went to Hollywood, but it doesn't seem like he went to the parties.
Fear factor, baby.
It seems like he didn't go to the party, so he's okay,
No, he did not
or he
go.
didn't stay,
Gotta
or
hope not.
whatever you want to call it. Well, no, it would be out because they've already tried to smear campaign him already. They already dropped it where they did the worst they could do to him was saying, "Oh, he said the N-word a bunch of times."
Right, right.
And he did a heartfelt apology and was like, "Hey, man, I'm sorry. You know what? At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. We're all just joking around, but I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings."
Yeah, you know, it
He has
seemed
one of the
well,
largest reaches in the world.
the guy
Stand-up
seems pretty
comedian.
sincere and he seems pretty on the up and up.
He's not a journalist, but he keeps getting stuff out that you definitely know they wouldn't have on NBC or ABC, or they wouldn't put it out on 60 Minutes, this thing.
No, most of the journalists I just named off have probably been on his show.
So yeah, I mean, he's the same as like Jimmy Dore is a news-based podcast or media platform.
It is. They're
But
more like a news commentary
yeah.
show, but they're very informative. Don't be fooled.
No, no. I'm right now. I'm just trying to make the difference, or I'm saying the difference. Like Rogan is a podcast where he has guests on,
Uh-huh.
and he has this podcast. It's done in an old style way of like having a guest, and then they just talk and talk. But it's this new style way of doing it for 2 to 5 hours, possibly
Long form
long
conversation.
form with hardly any commercial breaks. That you can, if you pay for Spotify, you can blow right through, but it's only going to be for like a minute or two. And it's usually most of the stuff is actually healthy stuff based anyway. But so he's like one of the largest reaches in the world. And if you listen to him alone, you could only listen to Rogan and do no research. You'd be okay because you'd be hearing how important health is,
Uh-huh.
like working out, diet, things of that nature. That gets discussed a lot. He puts these alternative people out, and it seems like it's always in one kind of direction, or mostly in one direction, where he's trying to understand or learn new things. If it's medical, if it's, we all have seen what he went through by trying to be like, no, this is simple. You could just do this. And they're like, oh, he's taking animal medicines.
Yeah.
Uh, he's one of the, he has the largest reach. And then you have to, so that's interesting. I'm sure he's been talked to. I'm sure there's guests that he was going to have and they didn't happen. I'm sure there's some weird mishaps or something. Who knows?
Well, yeah, he has that like CIA guy who comes on the regular. Like, I'm not really one to trust a CIA
I'm not
person on
either,
a
but I
podcast.
realize they're also compartmentalized. So it's like, yeah, I don't, I used to listen to those, and then I was like, finally, like, this dude's literally ignoring facts on the other side and just
Hmm.
pretending like that's not true. So I couldn't really take the Mike Baker interviews anymore. But the guy you listen to is way more news based, and it's like his take all the time is like, looking at articles, or you can talk more about it.
No, yeah, Jimmy Dore hits on current affairs, political news, wartime stuff. He hits on a lot of things that I feel might affect your personal life more than an Indonesian trans sex worker. He's going to tell you, like, hey, this is what Congress is up to. He's going to tell you, hey, this is a different perspective on this particular war. He's going to say, hey, this is how your congressional representatives have lied to you in the past. Hey, this is a story about the influence of banks. There are all these things that will come on the Jimmy Dore show that will very likely affect you more than a lot of the crap you see in mainstream media. Because a lot of times when I scroll through Google News to look for one of our break the news sites, I see a lot of crap on there that is just so not relevant to have any kind of direct impact on my life. Now, Dora will do a lot of comedy. They'll do some stuff that are, they'll do stuff that's
Satire.
not going to affect you. It's not all like, relevant to the average American. But the majority of the stuff that Jimmy Dore is doing political and social commentary on, it's relevant to your regular American person and and topics that might actually affect your ability to gain health, wealth, and happiness.
And he's not like a popular guy. Like, he's not, people don't, that's an alternative source for news. This is where
Mhm.
you have to go nowadays, people. Like, if you only watch the big four networks, you're doomed, because you have you're listening to propaganda that's been bought and paid for by the corporations. You choose
Oh,
which
God, yeah.
one. So that's it. Like, that's all you need to know. The reason that the uh Cupid 19, all that happened was because the major news went along with it all because they had to, because their biggest donors, the pharmaceutical people, were they can't say nothing negative about them.
Oh
You
yeah,
can't do
the
any of
death
that.
projections that they put out there.
Oh, bro, what they did, the psychological damage they did, and they're allowed to do because of, once again, the Smith Mundt Act, or Smith Mundt Remodernization Act, where
Modernization Act,
the
yeah.
Modernization Act, which means modernization in this term means you can now, it's going to be modern. All right.
Yeah, it
The
means
old times, you
they just
couldn't do
wiped.
propaganda, but this is modern now. You can do propaganda against
God
people.
damn.
The tax paying, the money you're using, you can do propaganda against those people. Totally legal. It's modern. Very modern.
Paid for by us so they could propagandize us. God
Yeah.
damn.
Welcome to the jungle.
Yeah, and then you have the whole issue of access journalism on top of that. The people at the New York Times want to talk to the highest placed person at the CDC. Once they get that interview and that conversation and those sound bites and those quotes, they're going to print exactly what the CDC said word for word as if they're stenographers, rather than push back against it because they don't want to lose their access to the highest ranking person at the CDC. And they all operate on the same thing. That's when they're dealing with the government, with the royal family in England, all these things. It's this access journalism business is another one. They'll say whatever the person in power wants them to say so that they could continue to have access, so that they could be the one who leads the good story, or that they're not left out of the club. Journalism, dude. It's embarrassing. Embarrassing.
The current state of mainstream journalism, yes, is disgusting. It almost feels like if they're knowingly writing these things, which I think some know that they're writing BS, but that's what sells. Like, F you, dude. This is not good. This is, and because it's not being done in satire. This isn't for like jokes, because that's different.
Uh-huh.
Like, you shouldn't be able to joke. You should be able to write things, write whatever. Who cares? But when we're passing it off to the people and but this is how deep we've gotten into with the programming and the government controlling. I mean, the White House more is in deep trouble right now, but nothing will ever happen because it's all being shown that they had access portals to the social media giants, and they could say, hey, don't let people talk about this. Hey, get rid of this. You can't do that. That's First Amendment problems right there. And we'll see what happens. I don't think people are going to be real happy. I don't think they're real happy with it.
It's rough. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. What do you say?
Where's your I guess we can end with this and we'll just have to spin it into a positive note because we're at break the news.
Beep, 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 beep. Yeah, this is at this point, I don't give a shit if it's positive or not, because look, here's the deal. This whole business of journalism in America is embarrassing. And we're breaking this story from the New Republic for exactly the reason of highlighting how we are being lied and manipulated to. And this story from the New Republic is, you'll never guess what JFK Jr. says really causes mass shootings. Okay, so first of all, just the very wording of the title is manipulative because they're already
Just
steering
say
you
it
in
again.
one
Say it
direction.
again. Say it again.
Sure.
Title again.
You'll never guess what RFK Jr. says really causes mass shootings. That language right there already is manipulative. Oh, you'll never guess. They're already painting a bad picture of this guy.
They're biasing the story from just off the top.
Yeah. Now, let's not even make a judgment call yet, because I might want to, on what he's saying is doing it. It's SSRIs.
And
SSRIs in video games is JFK Jr. saying is causing mass shootings. Now, those are the two main points that RFK Jr. made, and those are the two main points that are brought up immediately in this article. But then what the New Republic proceeds to do is, see, he follows those two statements with a couple follow-up bits of information, like the CDC can't do studies on gun violence and something else. And they immediately go after the two secondary points he made, where they dispute things like the CDC doing studies on gun violence, and they dispute the other thing, but they haven't as yet got into addressing SSRIs or video games related to gun violence. They then go on about that for a little bit, but then these guys go on and say some crap about they go into Kennedy's views on vaccines and other ideas that polluted waters making children transgender. China and the US are developing ethnic bioweapons. Wi-Fi causes cancer. So the point I'm making is this. Kennedy says SSRIs and video games are leading to gun violence and mass shootings, and they don't address either one of those points in any way whatsoever in the entire article, this article for the New Republic. They hit on his secondary points and dispute his facts, which maybe they're right. That's fine. He got the facts wrong, whatever. Just talk to me about SSRIs and video games. And then they later go into Kennedy has these other points of view about vaccines and pollution and ethnic bioweapons. At no point do they actually address the claims that this guy made. So they rip him apart on his facts. They rip him apart on these other ideas that are, clearly leading people to think they're conspiracies because they're presented as extreme and crazy. And never once do these people actually ever touch on what he claimed.
Yeah, well, they do a character assassination on him, like the atrazine in the water, which is messing with people's. It was messing with frog sex in a study they found.
That study was by Stanford or one of those big universities. Like that was a real accredited study.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's but they called it. Drinking water makes you transgender, or whatever. However, they just spiked it in that story to make him just discredit him. Like, oh, he believes all of this nonsense. He's one of these nonsense people. This is crazy. Like, how dare you?
Atrazine in the study
Listen to
caused
him.
the frogs to change their sex or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was always a joke about Alex Jones. Water makes frogs gay.
Yeah, but he was correct. There is something that does that, and then they're finding it in our water, along with microplastics and everything else. But
what people
these
remember,
these stories are they're killing the point of like what he's trying to say is like, oh, and then they just make it all sound like it's a lie. It's not SSRIs or it's not video game violence or things like that. They're not leading this. This guy's crazy. We won't even talk about what he's saying here because here's why.
Because he's wrong in his facts and he has disagreeable points of view on other topics. Yeah. But you know what? Here's something that probably would have been worth putting in the article.